In a world dominated by placental mammals lies an isolated continent ruled by the marsupials. But if you take a closer look here, you might just find the last surviving members of the most ancient mammal lineage on Earth. Defying extinction, this group has established their legacy as the only egg-laying mammals left today. These are the Monotremes. Mammals are split into two clades, one containing the monotremes in the order Monotremata, and the other, Theria, containing every other surviving mammal species, both marsupials and placentals. The clade that monotremes belong to diverged from the mammal lineage before the Therians, making the 5 surviving monotreme species the most basal or ancient of the over 6,500 total extant mammal species today. In fact, the first monotremes likely appeared in the late Jurassic to early Cretaceous, tens of millions of years before the second oldest extant mammal order did, Didelphimorphia, the opossums. Almost every other extant mammal order appeared here during the early Paleogene. Monotremes originated on the Australian continent, initially favoring semi-aquatic lifestyles. The Cretaceous was the heyday of monotremes, living in the absence of the marsupials, which were stuck in the Americas. However, Australia was dominated by an even more ancient group, the dinosaurs. While the South American and Antarctic monotremes went extinct millions of years ago, we do know that in Australia, the largest known monotreme, a 66-pound giant echidna, held out until as recently as just 40,000 years ago, disappearing alongside most other megafauna during the late Pleistocene extinctions as a result of human arrival and drastic climatic shifts that dried much of Australia's landscape. Extant monotremes avoided dying out because their small sizes made them less vulnerable to hunters and environmental changes, as well as the geographic isolation of Australasia, which largely prevented placentals from ever arriving. However, their persistence ultimately comes down to their extreme specialization. The modern platypus retains the semi-aquatic lifestyle of early monotremes, and has evolved to feed exclusively on soft-bodied aquatic invertebrates. Marsupials struggle to adapt to aquatic lifestyles because they carry their young around, and submerging would, well, drown them. One marsupial species did find a solution to this, but that's a story for next episode. Echidnas survived alongside marsupials on land by also adopting a specialized diet of invertebrates, specifically bugs that other animals couldn't get to, in mounds, logs, and deep in the soil. By exploiting these hard-to-access food sources, modern monotremes limited their competition, allowing them to persist while retaining many of the primitive traits that largely caused stem mammals and other monotremes to vanish. So how did monotremes resemble our stem mammal ancestors? Well, we'll start with the biggest and strangest. Monotremes are the only mammals with true cloacas, a single opening where reproductive, urinary, and digestive systems all pass. A few therian mammals have secondarily evolved their own forms of cloacas, but monotreme cloacas are the only ones that are a holdover from a shared common ancestor with reptiles and birds. Although monotreme means single hole, males do have a separate penile duct for semen transport. They also have internal testes situated above their penis. Most therian mammals evolved external testes because body heat is detrimental to sperm viability, but monotremes' low body temperatures prevent this from happening. Both monotremes and marsupials inherited branched reproductive anatomies, with females having 2 uteri and males having bifurcated penises to match. In platypus, only the left ovary is functional, while the right remains in an embryonic state. This evolved in most birds to reduce weight in flight, but it's unknown why this occurred in the platypus. With no say in the matter, males did the only thing they could and evolved a larger left side to their penis. Both sides end in spines, which helps them hold on as mating occurs while floating in the water. And if you think that's weird, echidnas have 4-headed penises, basically 2 of these bifurcated penises connected at the middle, and they use 1 pair at a time. Despite being inside eggs, embryos do receive nutrients directly from the mother via uterine secretions during gestation. The eggs are leathery and uncalcified, and baby monotremes, called puggles, use a temporary keratinous egg tooth and horn-like caruncle to break through the shell and hatch. Newborn puggles are fetus-like, weighing just a few grams, but already have very well-developed forelimbs. In newborn marsupials, slightly less but still well-developed forelimbs help joeys crawl into the pouch and find the nipple. Like stem mammals, monotremes don't have nipples, but do have a milk patch, an area on the abdomen, where milk is secreted from mammary glands through their skin pores that pool in grooves of their fur to be lapped up by puggles. The milk patch is more challenging to locate and reach than a pouch or nipple, making well-developed forelimbs critical for puggle survival. Lactating this way presents a serious risk of disease as milk inevitably mixes with dirt and bacteria in the mother's fur, but stem mammals pass down a clever solution, a highly expressed antibacterial protein in the milk. Monotremes retain a splayed-out stance passed all the way down from early tetrapods, or land-venturing fish. Fish move with lateral undulations, and it wasn't until therian mammals that limbs migrated beneath the torso and the spine flexed vertically for more efficient terrestrial locomotion. Their splayed-out build remains advantageous for swimming, with many aquatic and semi-aquatic placental mammals actually reverting back to this build. However, it gives them an awkward reptilian gait on land. Monotremes retain interclavicle and coracoid bones, which therian mammals ditched for a flexible sternum and a reduced coracoid process for greater shoulder mobility in their advanced terrestrial movement, while both monotremes and marsupials kept their epipubic bones. In early mammals, these created extra muscle attachments to support the weight of the hindquarters, stiffen the trunk, and let the abdominals pull the hind limbs forward, which assisted their primitive walking style. Additionally, epipubic bones help with breathing and support for pouches and large litter sizes. Once a common structure among stem mammals, monotremes represent the only mammals left with tarsal spurs, though only the male platypus still use them for their original purpose and venomation. Male echidnas secrete a waxy substance from their fastigial spurs to attract mates, while female monotremes have spur buds that drop off within the first year, and non-functional glands. Monotremes have the lowest average body temperatures of all mammals. They become noticeably lethargic in ambient temperatures around 84 degrees Fahrenheit, and being unable to regulate heat through sweating or panting, temperatures above 93 are considered life-threatening. However, monotremes survive in harsh conditions remarkably well by relying on their behavior. They escape into burrows or other forms of cover, store tons of fat, and have specific active times that they can modify. While platypus spend most of their time in cool water, echidnas have had to develop additional behaviors on land to help maintain their body temperatures. They journey to water to swim and cool off, using their snouts as snorkels. They blow snot bubbles, which cools them down as they evaporate, and avoid rain to stay warm. In extreme cold, monotremes can enter torpor to reduce metabolic demands and conserve energy, their body temperatures plummeting down to the 40s. While monotremes did inherit low body temperatures, modern monotremes likely evolved even lower ones as an energy-efficient response to living in harsh environments, relying on their behavior rather than spending energy on constant thermoregulation. Other various traits inherited from their ancestors include double cones in their retinas, a type of photoreceptor cell present in many fish, reptiles, and birds, but almost no other mammals. These may help detect luminance and polarized light. A banana-shaped cochlea, or inner ear, rather than a tight spiral like all other therian mammals, as well as rudimentary cervical ribs, lack a corpus callosum in their brain, instead having bundles of nerve fibers to connect the two hemispheres, like marsupials. They're sexually dimorphic, with males slightly larger than females, and have life histories more similar to larger animals than to animals their size, with short-beaked echidnas' lifespans being about 4 times what would be expected for a mammal of their mass. Monotreme sex chromosomes don't follow the general mammalian rule XX and XY. Instead, platypus have 5 pairs, while echidnas have 9 total, with 4 Y chromosomes for males. One of these X chromosomes contains DMRT, a gene cluster that plays a central role in sex determination and differentiation. It's also found on the Z chromosome of birds, which are partially homologous to monotreme X chromosomes. Both carry vitellogenin genes which code for egg protein, a precursor to yolk formation. However, monotremes have fewer copies of this gene because they use milk to fuel the remainder of development. Their Y chromosome contains a completely different gene from therians that triggers development of male characteristics. Lastly, monotremes undergo meroblastic or partial division during development like birds and reptiles, rather than holoblastic or complete cleavage like all other mammals. This allows cells to share cytoplasm with the yolk and exchange waste and nutrients with the egg. With inherited traits covered, what did monotremes independently evolve that makes them different from stem mammals? For one, monotremes have bare snouts lacking vibrissae or whiskers, being one of the only mammals to lack them along with humans, instead being covered with sensitive electro and mechanoreceptors which help them locate prey. Monotremes are the only known mammals, other than 2 dolphin species, with electroreception abilities, which allows them to sense electrical signals given off by their prey's literal muscle contractions, like heartbeats. Now that would be a cool concept for a horror movie. It's especially important for platypus, which close their eyes, ears, and nostrils underwater, relying solely on their highly sensitive bill armed with 40,000 electroreceptors to track down prey. Despite the name, a platypus's bill isn't hard like a duck's. Rather, they're pliable and soft with a suede-like texture. Glands in their bill secrete a gel that conducts electrical currents into nerve endings beneath the bill's surface. Their electroreception is so advanced that studies suggest they perceive electrical signals in a similar way to how we feel touch with our hands. Echidnas have greatly reduced their number of receptors because electrical signals don't travel as well in air, opting to invest in smell. Nevertheless, echidnas still have a sensitivity to electric fields 1,000 times stronger than humans and have been known to dig up batteries. Monotremes use mechanoreception, a more common ability among therians, to detect vibrations. Push rods in their snouts, made up of columns of nerve cells physically separate from surrounding skin, are easily disturbed by slight movements and pressure changes, causing them to move independently, triggering a nerve. Platypus have roughly 60,000 mechanoreceptors, allowing them to pinpoint tiny worms in river bottom sediment from 8 and possibly up to 18 inches away with extreme precision. An enlarged mandibular canal allows for the transmission of an artery and nerve branch to their sensitive snouts, a potential factor in the loss of their teeth, as it may have crowded out tooth roots. However, this was mostly caused by monotremes' soft diets rendering them obsolete. Most extinct monotremes had teeth to catch and chew larger vertebrate prey like fish and frogs, but modern monotremes have replaced their teeth with keratinized food grinding pads. They even lost their stomach and digestive acid because their diet is so easily processed. Their esophagus essentially leads directly to their intestines. However, platypus do need to swallow pebbles to help break down their toughest prey. They also have huge prefrontal cortexes, with echidnas having the largest relative to body size of any animal. Experiments have even proven that echidnas can remember what they've learned over a month and apply that knowledge to navigate mazes, indicating cognitive abilities comparable to rats and cats. This helps in processing the copious amounts of sensory information taken in while foraging. Monotremes have a range of natural predators, although adult echidnas only have to worry about a few of them, like crocodiles. And apparently tiger sharks, too. On mainland Australia, non-native and introduced predators like dingoes, feral cats, and red foxes also prey on monotremes, though they don't pose nearly as big of a threat to them as they do to the smaller marsupial populations that they've decimated. Monotremes also lack external ears, or pinnae. Stem mammals also lacked pinnae because their inner ears were still evolving, but monotremes do have the characteristic mammalian hearing anatomy of 3 integrated middle ear bones, which they likely evolved independently from therian mammals, but that's not the point. This means they lost rather than inherited this trait. Many aquatic and semi-aquatic therian mammals also reduced or lost their pinnae, because it creates drag and hearing just isn't as useful underwater. So let's dive into Tachyglossidae, the echidna family. Echidnas, also known as spiny anteaters, are characterized by modified keratin hairs that form protective spines. When faced with a threat, echidnas will lay flat, curl up into a defensive ball, or if given enough time, rapidly dig beneath them, leaving only their spines exposed. Powerful claws that serve as digging tools, a crucial adaptation for getting to their meals as well as for excavating burrows. Their hind legs are rotated about 180 degrees and have curved backwards-facing claws, a perfect design for burrowing, as well as for grooming. Echidnas will also shelter in wombat burrows or other natural cover. They can only open their mouths several millimeters wide, just enough to stick out their tongue and lap up bugs. They place their egg in a temporary skin fold that develops during the breeding season. This pseudopouch faces backwards like in quadrupedal marsupials such as wombats, allowing mothers to travel and dig without filling it with soil. They carry the puggles in their pouch for 2 to 3 months until their spines emerge. Then mothers leave them behind in the nursery burrow, returning every few days at first to nurse, gradually increasing the time between trips. They wean at around 6 to 7 months, coinciding with the late summer when food is abundant. They'll venture out of the burrow with their mothers but won't be fully independent until about 1 year. Echidnas take a long time to sexually mature, happening earliest at 4 years old, but up to 12 years old. While echidnas are not territorial, they do occupy large home ranges that average at around 50 hectares. They also have extremely short tails, can sort of climb, and have small eyes with poor visual acuity. However, their eyes contain the flattest lenses of any known animal, and therefore they have the longest focal length, meaning they can make out movement from super far away, but not well enough to know what it is. Lastly, their snouts are referred to as beaks, which leads us to the main division of Tachyglossidae into its 2 genera. Zaglossus, which includes the 3 long-beaked echidna species, and Tachyglossus, which contains the short-beaked echidna. The 3 elusive and poorly studied long-beaked echidna species are restricted to various elevated regions across the tropical mountainous island of New Guinea, which separated from Australia just 10,000 years ago. While the lengths of their beaks set them apart from the short-beaked echidna, so does the downwards curve, built for probing in logs and soil for worms and grubs, and they're equipped with barbed tongues to help grip squirming prey. Nose pokes found in the ground are helpful in researching these extremely rare animals. They're nocturnal and overall larger, darker, and hairier than the short-beaked echidna, in order to maximize heat absorption and retention in the cool climates of the high elevations that they inhabit, as well as to blend in with the dark forest floor. They also have shorter spines, relying on their size and a general lack of predators within their remote extreme ranges to avoid being eaten. Unfortunately, they are considered a delicacy by many tribes and have been greatly overhunted as a result. While they've been known to live upwards of 30 years in the wild, the only eastern long-beaked echidna in captivity, named JR at Taronga, is estimated to be 62 or 63 years old. Sir David's long-beaked echidna, named after the world-famous biologist, is critically endangered and lives solely within the Cyclops mountain range on the north-central coast of New Guinea, characterized by 5 claws in each foot and by being the smallest in the genus by far. The type specimen from 1961, and the only taxidermied specimen in existence, was estimated at just 4.4 to 6.6 pounds alive, much closer in size to the short-beaked echidna. From 1961 to 2023, not a single confirmed sighting was made. However, a research expedition in late 2023 captured footage of one, and eventually got footage of individuals foraging, some courtship behavior, as well as a male following a female, so the population is suspected to be reproducing. The western long-beaked echidna is also critically endangered. It has 3 and rarely 4 claws on each foot, but is more distinctive in size, the largest of the living monotremes weighing in at a max of 36 pounds. Its range is constricted to far west New Guinea, mainly on the Bird's Head and Bomberai peninsulas. Unfortunately, the Indonesian government does permit traditional hunting. Thought to be extirpated from Australia in the Pleistocene, a specimen from 1901 was labeled as being collected in Kimberley, Western Australia, though there's been a lot of debate on whether this was a mislabeling. However, the IUCN currently lists it as possibly extinct in Australia. The most common and well-studied Zaglossus species, the eastern long-beaked echidna, is listed as vulnerable. They typically have 5 claws on the forefeet and 4 on the hind feet, though some subspecies have 5 on all. They're 11 to 22 pounds and live at high elevations, generally 6.5 to 10,000 feet, but up to over 13,000 feet above sea level, and therefore have the darkest, densest fur. Their range encompasses the New Guinea highlands or the Central Range, and 3 other isolated mountain ranges, for a total of 4 subspecies. Listed as least concern, the short-beaked echidna is much more abundant, widespread, and well-studied than all of the Zaglossus species. Short-beaked echidnas inhabit virtually all environments present in Australia, from deserts and shrublands to forests and snowy mountains. They're characterized by longer spines, a shorter beak, smaller size, and varied coloration, which ranges from blonde to cinnamon to black in order to camouflage with their range of native habitats, though healthy adult albino individuals have been documented in the wild. They range from Tasmania, northwards across the entire Australian continent, and up to the lowlands of New Guinea. They're the most widespread endemic Australian mammal species, even beating all of the marsupials. Not too bad for a primitive mammal if you ask me. They typically live 14 to 16 years in the wild, although one individual at the San Diego Zoo lived at least 58 years. Short-beaked echidnas fill a unique niche called myrmecophagy. Myrmecophages are characterized by a strict diet of ants and termites and generally have strong claws and long sticky tongues to help reach their food. Notable myrmecophage species include an Australian marsupial, the numbat, although they don't compete with echidnas for food due to getting their termites from logs, as well as being diurnal and having a very limited range. Echidnas' eyes have keratinized corneal surfaces, protecting their eyes from the prey's chemical defenses, as well as their own spines when they curl up. Despite these adaptations, vision appears to play a minor role in their survival, with blind echidnas having been documented surviving in the wild. The Tasmanian subspecies is the only known monotreme to hibernate, rather than enter torpor, because food abundance decreases more drastically in Tasmania's colder climate. The heaviest echidnas are considered to be in the best condition, and are therefore preferred mates for both sexes, a major reason why foraging and building up fat reserves before entering torpor is so important for these animals. Breeding season can become dangerous for females, as males may become overly aggressive and wound them, with females having been observed dying from infection as a result of these injuries. Post-mating harassment by males can also be detrimental, as it prevents females from foraging enough to build up sufficient fat reserves before they enter their nursery burrow to raise their young. Males will even pursue and mate with already fertilized females, but draw the line at females that are too skinny. One study found abrasions around the cloaca in 48% of females in mating groups. Short-beaked echidnas are the only animal known to form what are called love trains, where males line up behind females, following them in a test of fitness. This can last up to several weeks before mating actually occurs. While 3 to 4 males is typical, up to 11 may follow a female at one time, with the smaller younger males at the caboose. Males often poke and prod around a female's tail in attempts to get her to mate, but she'll curl up if she isn't ready. If the female does become ready to mate and she still has several males following, she'll likely stop and lie with her face pressed into the bottom of a tree or bush. The other males will then begin to dig around her and try to push each other away, creating a donut-shaped rut around the female in the process. They are deceptively strong animals, with reports of them moving 30-pound stones. When just one male remains in the trench, he'll dig a spot next to the female and lay on his side to avoid getting poked during copulation. This position also helps the male use a single pair of his four-headed penis, allowing males to mate efficiently, alternating the use of each pair so that they can recharge one half while using the other, going back and forth between them several times. Echidnas exhibit extremely high sperm competition. They have some of the largest testes of any mammal compared to their body weight, reaching over 1% of their mass during the breeding season. A monotreme sperm is unique in that the sperm combines into bundles of about 100 each, increasing their velocity down the females along oviducts. Both sexes mate with multiple individuals during the breeding season, and so maximizing one's chance of successfully impregnating a female is critical. This ultimately explains why males are so desperate to mate, to the point of aggression and wasted effort trying to mate with already fertilized females. The other family within Monotremata is Ornithorhynchidae, containing a single species, the duck-billed platypus. Platypus weigh anywhere from 2 to 6.5 pounds and are 15 to 25 inches long bill to tail. Platypus have been confirmed living 24 years in the wild and over 30 in captivity. They're currently listed as near threatened, with pollution and habitat destruction being the main threats that they face, as they already have a limited range, unable to spread westward and colonize the dry Australian interior due to a lack of permanent freshwater habitats, and unable to spread further north due to the sheer concentration of crocodiles. Platypus need cool bodies of fresh water with soft soil and sufficient vegetation for their burrows, but don't mind elevation, inhabiting tropical lowland forests in Queensland, up to icy mountain runoff streams 1,600 meters high in New South Wales Australian Alps, able to tolerate water temperatures as low as 41 degrees. Fur hunting posed a significant threat to the platypus until they became legally protected in 1912. Their dense brown to reddish fur maintains a waterproof pocket of air by their skin, which is kept warm by their body heat, and can be released to control buoyancy. Platypus have light patches under their eyes, mimicking their eyes being open underwater to deter predators, and on their underside, giving them countershading camouflage. Their fur is even biofluorescent, as if this animal couldn't get more odd. Its purpose remains mystery, but it may make it difficult to be spotted by predators that can see UV light, like raptors, or possibly a way for platypus to find and recognize other individuals. Their eyes and ear holes are located in a muscular groove that closes, along with muscular skin flaps that seal their nostrils when underwater. Like many aquatic mammals, their bones display osteochlorosis, increasing their density so that they can easily dive and remain stable while swimming. When foraging, platies typically submerge for 30 to 60 seconds at a time and dive 3 to 16 feet deep, but can be up to 2 minutes and up to 26 feet deep. They'll surface for 10 to 20 seconds in between, and foraging can last up to 12 hours daily, or should I say nightly, as they're generally nocturnal, and they can eat about 20% of their body weight during this time. They push their sensitive bill through the coarse substrate of stream bottoms, swinging their heads side to side in search of annelid worms, insect larvae, shrimp, and other crustaceans like yabbies, which they store in cheek pouches until consuming at the surface. Their swimming style is totally unique among animals, alternating their forelimbs to propel themselves, hence the greater webbing in their front feet, while the hind feet and tail act as rudders and brakes. On land, they retract their webbing and walk on their knuckles to avoid damaging the delicate skin. However, they're usually not walking far, as it takes platypus about 30% more energy to walk on land compared to terrestrial mammals of their size. To reduce land travel, platies construct burrows at the water's edge, in which they'll spend 11 to 17 hours inside a day, sleeping for up to 14 hours of that time, and over 8 hours of that time can be spent in REM sleep, the most of any animal. Platypus are one of the very few venomous mammals, and the only ones that deliver their venom through a spur. In the toothless and otherwise defenseless platypus, their spurs are useful in interspecific combat for mating rights, with venom levels rising during the breeding season. However, they also use their venom against other threats, having stung people and pets that got too close. Stings have killed dogs and inflict weeks of agony on humans, leading to drops in blood pressure, temporary paralysis, hyperalgesia lasting months, increased blood flow to the wound resulting in an edema, and potentially has coagulating effects too. The venom is made up of defensin-like proteins used in other animals to fight pathogens. It's stored in the crucial gland in the thigh and delivered through a 12mm long spur, resting flat against their legs. The spur is attached to a small bone which allows it to be articulated at a right angle to the leg when ready for use. Platypus generally have bad vision above water, but their eyes are perfect for seeing underwater, with flat corneas, a strongly curved lens, and a nictitating membrane. Only one problem: they shut their eyes when hunting. Early semi-aquatic monotremes likely relied on vision to hunt and pass this down, but the platypus opted to focus entirely on using its bill to perceive its underwater world. Their eyes do still serve a purpose, however, as they're tilted upwards so that they can scan for predators while at the surface. They're actually known to be skittish, often diving when birds, even small harmless species, fly overhead. While normally silent, platypus will make a large, audible splash and dive if alerted or alarmed by potential danger, thought to be a warning signal to nearby platypus. Platypus can store up to 50% of their body fat in their tail for energy when food is scarce, when they want to enter torpor, or when females are preparing to breed. Lactating females actually consume more than their body weight per day. A squeeze test is the primary method for determining if an individual is healthy, where one side of the tail should not be able to touch the other if squeezed. They vocalize most commonly with growls, which are emitted when they feel threatened. They have musky scent glands near their neck to mark their territory and attract mates during the breeding season, which also occurs in the Australian winter, to coincide with raising young in the warmer months. However, their breeding season starts a little later than echidnas, and raising young is much quicker, with the young fully independent at just 3 to 4 months. Both sexes reach reproductive maturity in their second year, but females typically wait until 4 to mate. Platypus has small home ranges because they're restricted to water, but they'll travel within a few kilometers of their burrow, with males having overlapping territories with several females, and they can travel up to 10 kilometers away. Male platypus initiate the mating rituals of rolling sideways, diving, touching and passing, and gently biting the female's tail. These behaviors can last anywhere from less than a minute to over 30 and are performed repeatedly over a few days. If the female isn't receptive, she'll flee, as females typically only mate with one single male each season, although sometimes more. However, females aren't picky because males get so territorial in the breeding season that it's safe to assume that whichever male is able to stay within her area long enough to mate with her is likely a dominant individual. When a male and a female are about to mate, they lay their bills on each other's tails and create a donut shape in the water, circling for a bit before copulation occurs. After mating, females construct a long, complex burrow just for them and their offspring, as opposed to the simple resting burrows of platypus that are often shared by multiple individuals. These burrows typically have a single entrance and are no longer than 10 meters, but can have 2 to 3 inches and be up to 65 feet in areas prone to extreme flooding. Nursery burrow entrances are small to prevent predators and male platypus from entering. In captivity, a male platypus actually became partially stuck while trying to enter a female's nesting burrow, and when the female returned, she became visibly agitated and immediately started working on the entrance to make it even smaller. While platypus have small claws to dig with, they mostly construct their burrows with their bodies and their tails, compacting the soil into the walls of the tunnels that they create. Excess soil is formed into balls and rolled out. For about 3 to 5 days, a pregnant platypus carries wet nesting materials like roots, twigs, and leaves in her tail and down into the nesting chamber of the burrow to soften and moisten the floor, as well as bedding to line the nesting chamber with. After laying, she wraps herself around the eggs to keep them warm, touching her tail to her head and only leaving to forage. But because foraging is so time-consuming, mothers plug up the tunnels leading to the chamber before they leave, called pugging. Echidnas do this as well. This protects against floods, prevents puggles from leaving too early, and maintains the heat and moisture levels inside as eggs become dented within minutes of being exposed to external air, and also tricks any predators that enter into believing they've reached the end of an empty burrow. Some less common predators, more specific to the platypus, include Murray cod, longfin eels, and racali. During my research on this video, I actually found a report of a documented violent encounter where a racali consistently pursued and attacked a female platypus, but she managed to wrap herself around the rat and hold it beneath the surface until it drowned. Lastly, monotremes hold strong cultural significance, being totemic species for Aboriginal peoples and playing parts in their stories. They're also a source of national identity and pride for Australians, having been featured on stamps, currency, and representing 2 of the 3 mascots for the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney. A short story to end this video: British Prime Minister Winston Churchill had a fascination with platypus and ordered one to be sent to him during World War II, which Australia happily agreed to do to increase military assistance. At the time, only 5 live platypus had been sent outside of Australia, all to the Bronx Zoo, and only one of those survived the trip, and it died a week after arriving. The one sent to Churchill, named Winston, was reportedly doing great, but they claimed he eventually developed shell shock after German attacks went on around the ship. However, it's believed this was a fabricated story and that Winston likely died from overheating, as the temperatures were logged twice daily and they well exceeded 80 degrees Fahrenheit as they crossed the equator. Churchill called the Australian Prime Minister to express his extreme disappointment, and Churchill, who had already had a taxidermy platypus specimen named Splash, ordered Winston to also be stuffed and sent to him. However, Winston's whereabouts are unknown to this day. Alright, that just about sums it up for this first episode. If you want to find out how just one of the over 330 species of marsupials managed to become semi-aquatic by turning into a literal living submarine, as well as learn all about the opossums and shrew opossums, then make sure to watch the next episode on Didelphimorphia and Pauci-tuberculata. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, thanks for watching.